Hello everyone and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah share. We're holding a Mishnah Berurah Chelik Vav. We're continuing to learn Hilchos Megillah at Mir Hashem. In this year we will be learning Daf Kuf Nun Aleph Amid Beis. We're going to finish up Siman Tov Reish Pei Zayin and begin Siman Tov Reish Pei Ches. So we're holding in the middle of Siman Tov Reish Pei Zayin Sif Beis. We are on the top line of Kuf Nun Aleph Amid Beis by the words of the Ramah. Just to recap what the Mechaber had said here at Sif Beis, the Mechaber taught us that the mitzvah of Mikra Megillah is doicha even the mitzvah of Talmud Torah. We know, we quote the Mishnah every morning when we say Berchas HaShachar, we say Talmud Torah Keneged Kulam. Talmud Torah is the greatest of all the mitzvahs, and certainly Talmud Torah is a Daraisa, Mikra Megillah is a Darabanan, and yet what the Mechaber told us was Mevatlin Talmud Torah Lishmaya Mikra Megillah. The Mechaber told us in the beginning of Sif Beis that we are mevatel Talmud Torah to hear Mikra Megillah, and the Mechaber said Kal v'chomer is certainly l'shar mitzvah shel Torah shekulam nitchi b'pnei Mikra Megillah. The Mechaber said all mitzvahs daraisas. If, as we know, Talmud Torah is keneged kulam and Mikra Megillah is even doicha Talmud Torah. By doicha, what I mean is we're mevatel Talmud Torah in order to hear Mikra Megillah. So certainly the Mikra Megillah is also doicha other mitzvahs aseis da'araisa as well. And then the Mechaber told us that the only thing that pushes aside Mikra Megillah is a mace mitzvah. If we have a mace, she'ein lo kavrim, and the Ramah put in the words kidei tzarchai, if the mace doesn't have the people that need to deal with it, so then we go deal with the mace mitzvah and we push off Mikra Megillah. Now we come to the Ramah. Says the Ramah, Hago, v'chol zeh lo mayri ela b'dika shoyis lasei shtehen. The Ramah qualifies this a little bit. The Ramah says, when we're going ahead and we're saying that the mitzvah d'Rabbanan of Mikra Megillah is doicha mitzvah say daraisa, that's only when ultimately both mitzvahs will be accomplished. Mikra Megillah will be accomplished and the mitzvah daraisa will be accomplished as well. Aval, however, says the Ramah, im efshar lasei shtehen, if you're not going to be able to accomplish both, then ein shum mitzvah daraisa nitches v'pnei Mikra Megillah. There's no daraisa that's going to be pushed aside in the face of a darabanan of Mikra Megillah. So if somehow you have a choice, either we do a mitzvah daraisa, or we're not going to do the mitzvah daraisa at all, and instead we're going to do the mitzvah darabanan of Mikra Megillah, then the Ramah says that you're not going to have the mitzvah darabanan of Mikra Megillah push aside a mitzvah say daraisa. Continues the Ramah, V'ha de meis mitzvah kaidim, when we say that meis mitzvah comes before Mikra Megillah, dafke b'de'ef shaloi l'kaira achar kach, that's only true if we're going to take care of the meis mitzvah and then we're going to be able to learn the Megillah. But if by taking care of the meis mitzvah now, we're going to lose the mitzvah of Mikra Megillah completely, then the Ramah says, better learn the Megillah now and bury the meis mitzvah later. So again, what the Ramah is trying to do over here is, the Ramah is trying to balance both. So to be mesader, to organize what we've seen here, we have the Mechaber tells us you should know Mikra Megillah is doicha Talmud Torah. You mevatel Talmud Torah in order to learn the Megillah. So you have a seder that you normally learn. Now it's time to hear the Megillah. You get up from the Beis Medrash and you go hear the Megillah. The Mechaber said, if we see that Mikra Megillah is doicha Talmud Torah, certainly it's also doicha other mitzvahs aseh. Then the Mechaber said, but there's one mitzvah that Mikra Megillah is not doicha. What is that mace mitzvah? Mace mitzvah, kavod abrius. You have a mace that's mutal b'bizayin. There's no one there to do a kvura. That you have to go to the kvura, and that is going to take precedence above Mikra Megillah. Then the Ramah said, wait a second. When we're saying that Mikra Megillah is doicha mitzvah say daraisa, that's only if ultimately we're going to be able to do both mitzvahs. But if we're not going to be able to do both mitzvahs, we're not going to sacrifice a mitzvah say daraisa in the face of Megillah, which is a darabanan. Then we saw that even this idea that the Meis Mitzvah comes before Mikra Megillah, that we have to balance that as well. When does Meis Mitzvah come before Mikra Megillah? That's if after you do the Kfura, you're still going to have time to lay the Megillah. But if by doing the Kfura now, you're going to lose all the possibility of laying the Megillah, then laying the Megillah first and do the Kfura later. Because like the Mishnah Berurah is going to point out, you could always do a Kfura Balayla. Let's see the Mishnah Berurah's inside. So let's go to Mishnah Berurah, Ice Cut and Test. But the Ikka shows, when is it true that Mikra Megillah is Daicha, a Mitzvah Daraisa? That's only when there's time to do both. Says the Mishnah Berurah, V'hu adin inyan Mila u'Megillah, we would have to do the same balancing act between a bris Mila and Megillah. If there's plenty of time to do both, Megillah kaidem mishum persume nisa. Megillah, says the Mishnah Berurah, following the reasoning of the Mechaber and the Ramah, Mikra Megillah would come before bris Mila as long as there's still time to do the bris after the Megillah. Why does Megillah come first? Because of Persume Nisa. However, the Mishnah Berurah says, "V'ha'olam nayhagin lamol kaidem ha-Megillah," but the minig is that we do a Milah before the Megillah. Ukidla kaman b'sayv sim tafreich tzadikim. Ice cotton yud aval im efsher. If you're going to lose the mitzvah say daraisa completely by doing Mikra Megillah, then the Ramah said you're not going to have that a mitzvah d'Rabbanan of Megillah is totally doicha mitzvah say daraisa. What the Ramah wants to say is, if there's some kind of a mitzvah, that if you don't do this mitzvah now, you're going to lose that mitzvah completely, then Mikra Megillah is not doichid. And this that the Ramah goes ahead and says later, that if you're not going to be able to lay in the Megillah after, you should lay in the Megillah first. Hasam lo yispatel gamri hamitzvahs kfura. Over there, we're talking about where you're not going to be mavatal, the kfura of the Meis Mitzvah, which is the da'araisa legamri. We're putting Megillah before the Meis Mitzvah. That's only in a case where if we don't put the Megillah first, you're not going to be able to lay in the Megillah at all. Let's say it's already close to night. So if we're going to take the time to do the Kvura, by the time we finish the Kvura, it's already going to be Tzeis HaKarchavim, Motzi Purim, and we're not going to be able to lay in the Megillah anymore. In that case, we give precedence to Mikra Megillah, and we lay in Megillah now and do the Kvura later. The year Efshaloi Lekavra Balayla, because you could make a Kvura by night. Let's say that wouldn't be the choice. Let's say the choice would be either you do the Kvura now, or you're not going to be able to do the Kvura at all. What is such a heketimtza? Maybe there's a mace that's laying somewhere where you know that if you don't do the Kvura now, maybe the mace is going to be taken away, chas v'chalila, by wild animals. So in that case, you're faced taka with a choice. Either you do the Kvura of the Meis Mitzvah now, or if you go to do Mikra Megillah first, you're going to lose the opportunity to do the Kvura of the Meis Mitzvah, which is a daraisa completely. In that case, then certainly you would do Meis Mitzvah first, because Meis Mitzvah is a daraisa, and Mikra Megillah is only darabanan. You're not going to actually totally sacrifice a mitzvah daraisa in the face of Mikra Megillah. However, says the Mishnah Berurah brings down a very interesting Taz. V'ayin Taz, he says, take a look at the Taz in this Siman's Sifkat and Gimel in the Taz. Shehevi b'shem Marshal, the Taz brings from the Marshal, Ubach, and in the name of the Bach, the Tamid Mikra Megillah Kaidem Mishum Presumi Nisa. The Taz disagrees with this Ramah. The Taz, and he brings it from the Marshal and from the Bach, they say that Mikra Megillah, which is a derabanan, can be doicha a daraisa. Why is that? He says, first of all, because, like we see, Mikra Megillah is an Indian of Presume Nisa. And Presume Nisa, this Taz doesn't say this, he just says Presume Nisa, but we know that Presume Nisa ultimately is Kiddushem Shamayim. Presume Nisa is so important that a derabanan of Presume Nisa, the Darabanan of Mikra Megillah, which is Presuming Nisa, could be doicha, even a daraisa. You'll sacrifice another mitzvah, say daraisa, completely in order to do Mikra Megillah. Also, he says that Mikra Megillah is learnt out midivrei Kabbalah. It's not just Stama D'Rabbanan. It's not Stama Takanos Chazal. It's in Megillas Esther. So it's brought down in Ksuvim. And that gives it an extra chashivas. Also, we know that Yesh Kayach B'Yad Chachamim, the Chachamim have a Kayach, Lamoi Divreihem, to establish their takanas b'makam da'araisa b'sheva al taisa. The Chachamim do have a Kayach to say, they're not saying that you should actively be over a daraisa. What they're saying is that passively you will not be Mekayim a daraisa. In order to be Mekayim a mitzvah seder rabbanan, the Chazal do have the Kayach to do that, and it could be that by Mikra Megillah, that is the situation. Continues the Chavetz Chaim, V'agra b'Berurah gam kein tzever hachi ayin sham. The Gra seems to agree with this Taz, with this Bach, and with this Marshal. When does Meis Mitzvah take precedence over Mikra Megillah? That's if you're still going to be able to do Mikra Megillah after the Kvura. But if it's already close to nightfall on Motzei Purim, Yikra Megillah, laying the Megillah first, because the Kvura you could always do at night. The Rama is bringing this down in the name of Rev Eliyahu Mizrahi. But there are many Achronim who disagree with this. The sovereign that they hold, even if you're going to lose Mikra Megillah completely, however, remember what we learned in the previous year, the Dafka b'Meis Mitzvah Mamish, that's only when we're talking about a real Meis Mitzvah, which means that if you don't do the Kvura, there's nobody to do the Kvura. Avaloi b'shar Meisim, not by a mace where there is a Chevra that's going to make sure that the Kvura will happen. Fa'afilu im nifsar sham de b'shar Meisim gam ke mitzvah lak to Kvura sa l'kriyas ha-Megillah, al kol panim echad yitchal yidei zeh kriyas ha-Megillah l'gamri, if there's a risk that you'll miss Mikra Megillah completely, b'vadi Megillah kaidem v'yikaver meisai b'layla. Okay, that concludes Siman Taf Reish Pei Zayin. Now we will begin Siman Taf Reish Pei Ches. Din krachim hamukafim chayma b'mais Yeshua ben Nun. We know that there are two different times for Mikra Megillah and for the mitzvahs of Shalach Manos, Matanos Lavyayinim, Sudas Purim. There's Yodalid and there's Tesvav. Regular cities, regular villages, they keep all of the mitzvahs of Purim on Yodalid Adar. But an ir hamukefes chayma mimais Yeshua ben Nun, if you have a city that was surrounded by a wall already dating back to the times of Yeshua ben Nun, those types of cities keep what we know colloquially as Shushan Purim. They keep the mitzvahs of Purim on the 15th of Adar, not on the 14th. Ubai ches seifim, and here we have 8 seifim. Says the Mechaber Sifalev, krachim hamukafim chayma mimais Yeshua ben Nun, cities that are walled dating back to the times of Yeshua ben Nun, afilu einan mukafin achshav, even if they are no longer walled cities, but they were walled cities at the time of Yeshua ben Nun, kairin b'tezvav, they read the Megillah on the 15th of Adar, not on the 14th, afilu imheim b'chutz la'aretz, and this is true even if they are located in chutz la'aretz. And here we have now a very fascinating Mishnah Berurah Chelik Aleph, which I think is going to be an eye-opener. Says the Chavetz Chaim, Ki bizman Mordechai be'es hanes, at the time of Mordechai and Esther, when the Nes of Purim occurred, Ksiv, it is written in the Megillah, Shehayehudim shebechal makayim nelchamu b'yom shloisha asar, the Yidden all over the Malchus of Achashverosh, all over the world, they waged wars against their enemies on the 13th of Adar, V'nachu, and they rested b'yom arba asar on the 14th of Adar, v'also oisay mishteh v'simcha, and they designated the 14th of Adar as a day of Seudah, as a day of mishteh and simcha. And that's why we have Purim on the 14th, because most of the world, they waged war against their enemies on the 13th, and the 14th became the Yom Tov day. The 14th became the Purim day. But Ubishushan, in Shushan, Esther asked Achashverosh for a special dispensation. She wanted an extra day in Shushan for the Yidden to continue weeding out and eradicating their enemies. Ubeshushan nitel leYehudim leilachim emakom gam b'yom arba asar. In Shushan, the Yidden got a special dispensation. Not only were they able to fight against their enemies on the 13th of Adar, they were able to continue fighting against their enemies on the 14th of Adar, and they were able to eradicate more enemies. Therefore, v'lo Yom Tov al Chamisha Asar. So for them, the Yom Tov day came on the 15th of Adar, not on the 14th of Adar. Since it turned out that at that time there were two different Yom Tov days, for most of the world it was the 14th of Adar, but for Shushan it was the 15th. Therefore, Kishakava Mordechai ve'Esther Pa'askamas Anshe Knesses Agdola Likpaya Purim L'Doros, when Mordechai and Esther sat down with the Anshe Knesses Agdola to designate a Yom Tov of Purim for all time, Chilku Gam Kenoisei L'Shtei Yomim, they made it up 2 different days. Now, says the Chavetz Chaim, V'hayaroi l'sakein, really what they should have done was, they should have been misakin, shekol ir shehi mukefes chayma k'may Shushan, yiyadayim l'Shushan la'aseis b'tezvav. What you would have thought they would say is, they would have said, okay, we have to divide it up. There was Shushan and there was everywhere else. But we want to set 2 days. We want to follow the precedent of most of the world, but we also want to follow the precedent of Shushan. So you would think what they would have done was, they would have said, any place similar to Shushan should keep the 15th. Everywhere similar to the rest of the world should do the 14th. How are we going to determine what kind of city is considered to be similar to Shushan? Says the Chavetz Chaim, V'hayaroi lislois hakavod b'Shushan. You would have thought they would look at Shushan and they would say, in order to keep the 15th, you have to be similar to Shushan, because it is Shushan that kept the 15th. Ulasakin, and therefore they should have been Misakin. Shekol ir shuhu mukefes chayma mimois achashveirosh yekru b'tesvav. They should have looked at Shushan, and they should have said, okay, Shushan is a city that had a wall at the time of Achashverosh. So any other city that's walled from the time of Achashverosh, they should lay on the 15th. However, they didn't do that. Instead, they said, a city that's walled, Mimais Yeshua ben Nun. What does Yeshua ben Nun have to do with this? Yeshua ben Nun was a long time before Purim. If you're trying to style the keeping of Shushan Purim after Shushan, so you should have said any city that was walled at the time of Achashverosh, like Shushan was. But that's not what they did. They said Yeshua ben Nun. Why Yeshua ben Nun? Explains the Chavetz Chaim. Kevon she'eretz Yisrael hoisa chareva ba'isayes. You have to remember that the Nes of Purim happened in the middle of Golus. It was Golus Bavel. So Eretz Yisrael was chareva at this time. Eretz Yisrael was destroyed. It was in ruins during the time of the Nes of Purim. V'yi elefiza ayarois hamukafais b'chutz laaretz chashuvais mehem. What the Anshe Knesses Agdola said is, what are we doing? What we're going to end up doing is, we're going to say, cities that are walled from the time of Achashverosh, they have a chashivus. What's the chashivus that they have? They keep Purim on the 15th of Adar, not on the 14th. Now, why is that a chashivus? The reason it's a chashivus is because what is the underlying concept of keeping Purim on the 15th and not on the 14th? It's because Shushan got a chashivus. The rest of the world only had 1 day to eradicate their enemies. Shushan had 2 days. So the fact that they keep Purim on the 15th instead of on the 14th is because they got the 13th and the 14th to eradicate their enemies, while the rest of the world only got the 13th. So that's a chashivus. So Anshe Knesses Agdola said, wait a second. Now if we're going to style the 15th after Shushan, what we're going to say is cities that had walls around them at the time of Achashverosh, those are chashuv cities that keep Purim on the 15th. No cities in Eretz Yisrael are going to fit the bill, because at that point in time, by the time of Achashverosh, Eretz Yisrael was in ruins. So we're going to give chashivas to cities outside Eretz Yisrael, above and beyond cities in Eretz Yisrael? Anshe Knesses Agdola couldn't be sovel that. They couldn't take that. So v'yeh lefi zeh yari so b'kafis b'chutz la'aretz chashuvas mehem. V'alkein therefore tiknu l'chvoid Eretz Yisrael. So l'chvoid Eretz Yisrael v'achik tesis hagdol wa mesakin shekol irshu mukefes b'mais Yeshua bin Nun yikru b'tesvav. We should give the chashivas to cities that had walls at the time of Yeshua ben Nun. Alpha pisha ein mukafes achshav, even if they're no longer walled. V'ashar b'yodalit, the rest were laid on yodalit levad Shushan, with the exception of Shushan itself. Alpha pisha ein mukafes b'mais Yeshua ben Nun, even though Shushan itself did not have a wall at the time of Yeshua ben Nun. Afilo haki kairin b'tesvav b'pnei shabai nasa nes. They laid on tesvav because that's when the nes happened. Okay, a little bit of an abbreviated share today. We're going to stop over here, and Mir Hashem will continue with Kuf Nun Beis Amud Aleph tomorrow. Thank you so much for joining me for limud HaTorah. Discuss of limud HaTorah should be Megan. I got Klal Yisrael, the Ron Shem should send Yeshua Sefrus Parnasa should do with all those in need, and we should be zeicher to see the Bias Gal Tzedek Meher V'Yameinu Amen. Be well.